Good morning, I'm Richard Higgs from Harold Stevens. We are later life financial and legal planning specialists based in West-beyond-Trim in northwest Bristol. And today we're talking about reasons why you might want to vary your will. There are a number of reasons why a beneficiary might not want to inherit the assets that have been left to them in the will. But usually there's financial and perhaps tax benefits to the estate and the beneficiary for varying a will. Now there's basically two ways in which you can vary a will. There is a complete disclaiming or refusal to inherit those assets, in which case the beneficiary has no control over where those assets would go. And the more common way would be through a deed of variation, where the beneficiaries have complete control over where and to whom and when those assets, that inheritance, goes to. So deed of variations, they can be quite complex. There are strict criteria that has to be met to make them legally effective. So I would always recommend that you take professional legal advice when thinking about a deed of variation. But let me take you through some common reasons why you might want to vary the will through a deed of variation. First of all, it might be that you as a beneficiary are a lot wealthier than you were when the will was written. So you might not need or want that inheritance. It might be actually better to skip a generation and transfer that inheritance to the grandchildren, for instance, who are still getting set up and actually need the money, whereas perhaps you might not need the money at that time. And also it can make sense not to receive assets and property which might make your inheritance tax situation not ideal. So that's the first reason really. You might just not need the money anymore. You might be a lot wealthier than you were when the original will was written. Similarly, the will might be an old will. It might have been written many years ago and the family dynamics might have completely changed since the original will was written. You might have a lot more children, grandchildren. The family dynamics might be completely different, in which case it might be much more appropriate for the beneficiaries to do a deed of variation to reflect the more current family situation. The deceased might have left money or assets to charity in the will, but not enough to exceed the 10% rule for inheritance tax. Just as a reminder, if you leave 10% or more of your net assets to charity, you can get your inheritance tax rate reduced from potentially 40% down to 36%. And so if some of the money or assets are left but not over 10%, it might be very beneficial, tax efficient for the beneficiaries to leave more of those assets to charity to not only benefit the charity of choice of the deceased, but also to reduce any inheritance tax. The testator might have lost capacity in lifetime and they might not have therefore been able to update the will to reflect the current family circumstances and their current wishes. So it might be appropriate for the beneficiaries to all come together and do a deed of variation to reflect those more appropriate current circumstances. There might be an error in the will, which clearly means that the will doesn't reflect the wishes of the testator, or it might not be tax efficient, or there might be various changes to the family dynamics which aren't reflected because of that error in the will. So the beneficiaries might want to come together to make good that error really in the will. And the will might be tax inefficient. So the will that was written might not take into account the nil rate band, the residence nil rate band, the transferable nil rate band, all different rules that have been brought in over the last few years. And so if the beneficiaries become aware of that, it might be much more tax efficient to adjust the will to take into account those new rules. As I said, deed of variations can become quite complex, so I'd always recommend to take professional legal advice if you're thinking of going down this route. That was a list of some potential reasons. You may have other reasons or some other circumstances within your family that you're thinking about going down the route of a deed of variation. Please make a comment in the comments below, and let's get the conversation started. Definitely like and subscribe to our Later Life Financial and Legal Planning channel on YouTube to keep abreast of all of those financial and legal issues for people in later life. And definitely join us next time for another video on later life financial and legal planning. Okay, see you again next time. Bye.